They said the plans changed. Mom, we forgot to tell you. So I made my own. Have you ever stood in front of a house with your best pie in hand, a warm coat wrapped tight around your body, the air crisp with holiday cheer, only to realize no one was expecting you? Because I have. It was the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. I'd flown from Asheville to Phoenix with a layover in Dallas, wearing the scarf my granddaughter Emily had knit me last year. The cranberry-colored one. The one that made people in the airport smile and say things like, "You're dressed just right for the holidays." I was. The invitation had come from my son Brent 3 weeks earlier. "Come out to Scottsdale, Mom. We're doing a big Thanksgiving dinner this year, the works. You'll love the rental house. It has a pool and a fireplace and those big windows you like." I'd said yes, of course. I always said yes. And I'd baked my signature pumpkin pie the night before I left, wrapped it in 3 layers of foil, packed it with cold packs in a carry-on cooler. Because they always said mine was better than store-bought. Grandma's is real, Emily once told me, like it has love in it. Well, love traveled with me that morning. The Uber ride from the airport was quiet. I looked out at the desert, its strange beauty cacti, like question marks the sky wide open, like an unfinished sentence. It had been years since I'd been to Arizona. I rehearsed what I'd say when I saw the kids. "Look how tall you've gotten." Guess what's in this tin? I even imagined how Brent's wife Lydia would feign surprise at the pie. She always pretended she didn't expect it, though she ate 2 slices. The driver pulled up to the address Brent had texted me. A modern white stucco house with stone accents, palm trees in large pots flanking the front door. I thanked the driver, stepped out carefully. Pie in hand, heart in the other. But something felt off. The lights were off. No car in the driveway. No music. No kids' bikes tipped over. Just stillness. I rang the bell, waited, knocked, waited again. I pulled out my phone, trying not to think the thought already forming. No message, no missed call, no change of plans, nothing. Just the same thread from Brent dated a week ago. Thursday, 4 p.m. 8542. Stone Hollow Drive. "Can't wait to see you, Mom." I called him. Voicemail. I called again, then again. On the 4th ring of the 3rd call, he picked up. "Hey, Mom," he said, voice bright, like a party was happening just out of frame. "Everything okay?" I stood there on the stone porch, holding that pie like it was some kind of offering. "I'm here," I said, quietly, "at the house. But no one's here." A long pause. Then, "Oh, shoot. Mom, I thought we told you. Plans changed last minute. We flew up to Lake Tahoe yesterday. Greg's brother had an opening at his cabin, and everything happened fast." Silence. "I thought Emily texted you." He added softer now. "She didn't." He sighed. "That's on me then." "I'm so sorry, Mom. Seriously. But hey, we'll make it up to you, okay? Maybe Christmas. We'll do something big." In the background, I heard laughter. Plates clinking. Music. Joy. Just not mine. I don't know what I said after that. Something polite, probably. Something easy. Something that let him off the hook. I always had a talent for that. I stood on that porch a while longer after the call ended. Not because I expected them to turn around, no, but because I needed a minute to gather what was left of myself. The desert breeze brushed against my collar. I could smell warm stone citrus in the air, and the faint nutmeg scent from the pie tin I still held, the only thing I brought that still carried any weight. I stepped down the stairs and pulled out my phone. Uber again, same driver, Malik Young, kind eyes. A hint of surprise when he saw me return so soon. "Plans changed?" he asked. I nodded. "Where to now, ma'am?" I looked at my screen. Still no messages. No missed calls. No one realizing I was standing alone in front of a locked house with a homemade pie and a heart full of waiting. I took a breath. "Back to the airport, please." He nodded without a word. Thank God for people who know when not to ask. The ride was quiet. Cactus shadows stretched long across the highway. The light was fading soft gold, retreating into deepening blue. I watched it all through the window and thought, maybe it wasn't today that I became invisible. Maybe it's just the first day I stopped pretending I wasn't. Back at the airport, I sat near the departure board, the one with the blinking screens. I didn't open my phone. I wasn't waiting anymore. That part of me had gone quiet. I sat there with the pie still in my lap, thinking, not, what do I do now? But something much more dangerous. What if I stopped doing what they expect and did what I want? One blinking line caught my eye. Savannah, Georgia Flight 413. Departs in 40 minutes. Savannah. I'd never been, but the name sounded soft. A place with porches and oaks and quiet that didn't feel so sharp. A place that didn't know who I had been or who I had failed to be. I stood up, walked to the ticket counter. "One to Savannah, please," I said. "One way." The woman behind the counter glanced up a polite flicker of surprise. Traveling alone, I smiled. Starting to. She printed the ticket. Window seat. I bought a cup of hot tea and found a quiet corner by Gate B11. And for the first time all day, I didn't feel abandoned. I felt aware, awake, aware of just how many Thanksgivings I'd spent trying not to take up too much space, trying to be the easy one, the helpful one, the one who never asks for anything. This year they forgot to tell me the plans changed. But maybe the truth is they didn't forget. They just didn't think it mattered. The gate agent called for boarding. I stood up, pie tin still warm against my palms, my heart steadier now. As the plane lifted into the night sky, the lights of Scottsdale blurred into golden specks below. The city grew smaller. So did the noise. And somewhere over the vast quiet of the country, I stopped feeling sorry. Not for them. Not even for me. I simply let go. They forgot to tell me the plans had changed, so I made new ones. For the first time, they were mine. Savannah, Georgia. Thanksgiving morning, 7:42 a.m. I hadn't planned to wake up early. But something about the air in Savannah is different. It's gentle in a way the desert never was. Even the silence here feels soft. I opened the window to let it in, that humid sweetness, the faint smell of pine and distant salt from the coast. A world that didn't know I'd been forgotten. A world that didn't ask me to smile through it. The room I'd rented was small, just one bed, one window, and a little desk with a crooked lamp. But it was mine. Not borrowed, not shared, not dependent on anyone's permission. Mine. There were no voices in the hallway, no clatter of children's footsteps, no husband snoring from the next room. Just the creak of old floorboards beneath my slippers and the quiet click of the kettle I'd brought to a boil. I made tea. Not for guests, not to accompany a meal I'd spent 3 days cooking. Just tea. For me. And I drank it slowly, sitting by the window, watching the light filter through the Spanish moss outside. The trees here hang low and long, like they're whispering secrets to the ground. I liked that. I felt like they understood something I hadn't put into words yet. I didn't cry. I thought I might. But no tears came. Not because I wasn't hurt, but because something stronger was stirring underneath the hurt. Call it resolve. Call it exhaustion. Call it the moment you stop asking to be seen and start seeing yourself instead. By 10 o'clock, I was dressed simple blouse, soft pants, sensible shoes. No one to impress. No one to perform for. I left the little inn and walked without a map. Savannah's like that, a city made for wandering. Brick paths, gas lamps, shaded squares with benches meant for reading or remembering. At one such square, I sat down under a tree, pulled out the small notebook I'd packed as an afterthought. It used to be Emily's pink cover unicorn stickers peeling at the corners. She left it at my house years ago. I never threw it away. I wrote on the first clean page, November 23rd, Thanksgiving. I'm alone, but not lonely. Not anymore. A woman passed by with a little dog, white curls, pink leash. She smiled at me like I belonged there. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like I had to earn that smile. I stayed on that bench for a while, thinking not about what I had left behind, but about what I might build now. You don't always need an invitation to begin again. Sometimes being left out is just the space you needed to walk yourself back in. That afternoon, I wandered into a used bookstore tucked between a Praline shop and a florist. It didn't look like much from the outside sun-faded awning, one dusty window, but something about it felt right, like it had been waiting for me without even knowing it. Inside, the air smelled of old paper and pine oil. A wooden ceiling fan turned lazily overhead, and books were stacked not just on shelves, but in towers across the floor as if they were still figuring out where they belonged. A man behind the counter looked up from a hardback he was reading. Tall, silver hair cardigan buttoned crooked. "You're new," he said. Not a question, just an observation. I smiled. Guilty. He folded a corner of his page, set the book down, and extended a hand. Callahan. Owner-janitor reluctant poetry recommender. Joanne, I said, taking his hand. Just passing through. Maybe. Well, Savannah has a way of convincing people to stay, he said, especially the ones who weren't looking to. He let me browse. I didn't buy anything that day, but I left with something anyway, a list of recommendations written on the back of an old receipt and a quiet feeling that I'd be back. From there, I found a small cafe across the square. Outdoor seating string lights, quiet music humming from an old speaker. I sat under a tree with a slice of pecan pie and a glass of iced tea, even though it was late November. Savannah didn't seem to care much for winter, and neither did I. That's where I met Dolores. She sat down at the next table, uninvited, unapologetic, completely at ease. 70s, maybe older. Red lipstick, turquoise earrings, and a woven sun hat that made her look like she owned every story in the city. "You alone?" she asked, not unkindly. "I am," I said. She nodded. So was I. At first. Then I remembered I prefer my own company anyway. She pulled out her knitting orange yarn thick needles and started working without looking down. I've lived in Savannah 15 years, she said. Moved after Harold died. Kids thought I'd be lost without him. Turns out I was lost with him. I raised an eyebrow. Good man, she added. Terrible listener. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because I recognized the shape of the truth inside it. She glanced at me sideways. You don't talk like a tourist. I'm not sure what I am yet, I said. Then you're in the perfect place, she said. Savannah's for the in-between. We sat together a while. She knitted. I finished my pie. Neither of us filled the silence with things that didn't need saying. Before she left, she scribbled her number on a napkin. If you need a ride, a recipe, or a place to sit when you don't want to talk, call me. I don't fuss. That night back at the inn, I placed the napkin on the little desk beside Emily's old notebook. 2 small offerings from this strange, soft city. I thought about calling Brent just to say I'd landed safe, just to hear whether he even noticed I'd gone. But I didn't. Instead, I boiled water for another cup of tea, sat cross-legged on the bed, and wrote again. Day 1. I met a poet in a bookstore and a woman with red lipstick who sees through people. No one needed me today, but 2 people saw me. That's a start. Before sleep, I stood at the window and watched the city breathe, lamp posts glowing like warm thoughts, the moss swaying like a lullaby. No one knew I was here. And somehow, for the first time in a long time, that didn't feel like abandonment. It felt like freedom. Sometimes the softest landings come after the hardest falls. Not because someone catches you, but because you finally stop bracing for impact. It was a Tuesday morning when I finally opened the folder. I hadn't planned on doing it, but I'd run out of clean laundry, and while searching for quarters at the bottom of my suitcase, I found the envelope I'd stuffed there before leaving Arizona, thick, slightly crumpled, sealed with a strip of tape that had yellowed at the edge. I placed it on the desk next to my tea. Just sat there for a moment staring at it. I already knew what was inside. I knew it, like I knew my own handwriting, because I was the one who'd made every note, printed every receipt, signed every check. The envelope was labeled in block letters, Brent Financial Support. A folder I'd started years ago, back when I still believed generosity would bind us tighter. Back when I still thought that helping meant I mattered. I opened it. The pages spilled out like old truths. Mortgage supplements. The down payment on their first house, $18,000 wired quietly with a note. So proud of you. Don't tell Lydia, just surprise her. A one-time transfer that became routine. The emergency car replacement. Private preschool tuition for the twins, the check for Greg's second business attempt, the one that just needed a cushion, $600 here, $2,000 there, $7,500 once when they said Lydia's insurance didn't cover the birth. Line after line, signature after signature, proof that I had kept showing up even when no one noticed I was already there. I totaled it out on a napkin. Just to see. 124, 380, 41 over 17 years. I didn't cry. I didn't get angry. What I felt was closer to recognition. This was the language I had been speaking all along. Money as affection. Transfers as presence. Direct deposit as a placeholder for connection, and still they had left me standing on a porch in Scottsdale with a pie and no place to go. That's what did it, I think. Not the money. The fact that even after giving so much, I wasn't worth a simple phone call. I sat back in the chair, fingers loose around my teacup. Outside the window, the trees swayed like they were nodding in agreement. I reached for my phone, opened my banking app, paused once, then tapped recurring payments. The screen lit up with all the things I'd forgotten to question. Brent Sheehan monthly. Transfer $750. Ed Fund tuition plan $400. G. Sheehan LLC business support $300, 3 taps each. Pause. Confirm. Cancel. Done. No warning. No announcement. Just the quiet end of a chapter I'd stayed too long inside. Sometimes rewriting your life starts with deleting the parts you were never asked to write in the first place. The next morning, I walked down to the local branch of my bank. It was a modest brick building with plastic poinsettias in the windows and a front desk that smelled faintly of copier paper and seasonal hand sanitizer. The woman behind the counter smiled like I was just another account number. But when I handed her my ID and asked to speak with someone in asset management, her smile changed. Just slightly. "I can get you a manager," she said. "Is this about a transaction?" "No," I replied. "It's about the transactions I'm ending." 5 minutes later, I was sitting in a glass-walled office with a man named Eric Polite, pressed shirt, young enough to call me ma'am, with the earnestness of someone who'd never had to cancel support for their own child. "How can I help you today?" he asked. I pulled out a folded piece of paper, a list I'd made the night before. Clean, simple. Names, amounts, dates, account numbers. "These," I said, placing it in front of him. "I want them all stopped. Permanently." He looked down at the list. "Just to confirm, Brent Sheehan is your son." "He is." He hesitated, his thumb hovering over the keyboard. "Would you like us to notify the recipients?" "No," I said. "Let the silence do the talking." He nodded slowly, entering the commands. One by one, the ties began to unravel. When he was done, he looked up. "Is there anything else you'd like to do while you're here?" I paused. "Yes. I want to open a new savings account under my supervision in the name of Emily Sheehan." He raised an eyebrow just slightly. "Another grandchild. My only grandchild," I said evenly. "The only one who showed up." We went through the paperwork. I moved a portion of my savings into the account. Enough to cover future tuition should she choose college. Enough to give her space if she ever needed to breathe on her own. I didn't want to use the money as a leash. I wanted it to be a ladder. Before I left, he handed me a folder with the new account details. "Anything else I can assist you with, Ms. Martin?" I looked at him and smiled, not with warmth, but with certainty. "Yes." "Can you refer me to a local estate attorney?" He blinked, then nodded. "Of course." An hour later, I was sitting in a new office, this one smelling faintly of lemon oil and quiet decisions. The attorney's name was Carla Jennings, and she greeted me with a firm handshake and a yellow legal pad already half full of other people's turning points. "I need to revise my will," I said plainly. "And while we're at it, remove Brent and Lydia from my power of attorney. They've lost the right to speak for me." She didn't blink, just turned the page. "And the new beneficiary, Emily," I said, "and only Emily." She wrote in swift, slanted lines. Didn't ask why. Didn't try to persuade me otherwise. That's how I knew I'd found the right lawyer. It took an hour to go through everything. The house I still owned in Asheville, the investments, the old life insurance policy Brent didn't even know I'd kept active. We folded the papers neatly. She promised to have everything ready for signature by the following week. When I left her office, the sun had shifted. A gold warmth had settled over Savannah, making the sidewalks glow. And for the first time in years, I felt anchored. Not because I had taken something away from my son, but because I had finally returned something to myself. You can't rewrite the past, but you can revise who inherits the future. The messages started coming 2 days after the transfer stopped. At first they were polite. "Hey, Mom, just checking in. The Ed Fund payment didn't go through this month. Maybe a glitch." Then came the second. "Hi again. Lydia says the insurance draft bounced. Can you look into it?" The third came on a Sunday. Brent's voice tight. "I don't know what's going on, Mom. I mean, if something's wrong, you can just say it. We're not mad, this is stressing Lydia out." Each one landed with a different kind of weight. Not guilt, not regret, but recognition. This was what I had built, a version of love so quiet, so constant, they didn't even know it had form until it was gone. I didn't reply. Let the silence answer. On Monday, I got a text from Lydia, the first direct message from her in almost 6 months. "Hi, Joanne. I know things might feel strained right now, but this isn't like you. If you're upset, let's just talk. We can't fix it if you won't say what's wrong." That was the part that struck me. This isn't like you. As if the version of me they'd grown accustomed to, soft, invisible, conveniently giving, was the only one that counted. As if silence, for once not used in service of their comfort, was an act of aggression. But no, I wasn't punishing them. I was practicing not disappearing. And that takes more strength than any confrontation ever did. I spent that day cleaning the kitchen of the little rental house, not because it needed it, but because I wanted to see what it looked like when I took care of a space solely for myself. I organized the pantry, lined up the tea tins, wiped the baseboards, played music. I liked slow jazz, no lyrics, just brass and breath and time. Around noon, the doorbell rang. I paused. No one had ever rung it before. When I opened the door, there was no one there, just a small package on the step. Inside, a meal kit box. Chicken parmesan. Garlic bread. A bottle of red. Neatly packed. Branded. Convenient. There was a note tucked in the lid in Brent's handwriting. "Let's not let this grow bigger than it needs to be. Maybe dinner can be a bridge. Love B." I stared at it for a long time. Long enough for the chill from the ice packs to seep through the cardboard. Then I slid the whole thing unopened into the fridge. Let it wait. Let them wait. That night, I boiled water. Made myself pasta with butter and herbs. Ate it slowly, barefoot, standing at the window. No centerpiece. No folded napkins. Just me, exactly as I was. And I wasn't angry. I wasn't bitter. I was just done. Sometimes the hardest thing isn't letting go of others. It's letting go of the version of yourself that kept holding them. The knock came just before dusk. Not the hesitant kind. Not the frantic kind. But the kind that says, "I've come to get an answer." I opened the door and found Lydia standing on the steps, still in her travel coat makeup, faded hair pulled back too tightly. She didn't smile. "Hi," she said, not tentative, not warm, just, "Hi." I stepped aside without a word. She walked in, stopped in the middle of the living room, like someone unsure whether they were entering a stranger's house or returning to a place they'd neglected too long. Her eyes landed on the kitchen table. No centerpiece, no meal kit laid out. Just a folded dish towel and a half-finished crossword puzzle. "I thought we could talk," she said. Still standing, I gestured toward the armchair. "You can sit." She hesitated, then lowered herself slowly into the seat, as if bracing for something sharp. "I know Brent's been trying to reach you," she started. I nodded. He's worried. "About the bills," I said evenly. She blinked. "About you." I didn't answer, just tilted my head slightly. She cleared her throat. "This whole thing, it just feels sudden. That's all." I raised an eyebrow. "Sudden, like finding out your mother-in-law flew across the country and stood in front of an empty house that landed." Her face flushed just briefly. "I didn't know," she said. "Brent told me later it was all last minute. The trip, the flights, the house change. The forgetting." She closed her mouth. I waited. Let the silence grow roots between us. "You've always been so." She paused, searching for the word. "Reliable." "That's a beautiful word," I said, "when it's not used as a leash." She looked down at her hands. "I'm not here to argue," she said quietly. "I'm here because we need help. With the tuition, the premiums, and with the boys. Brent's hours got cut again, and we're afraid I finished." She nodded. I stood then, not abruptly, not to intimidate, just to stop sitting in the position of listening too long. "I'm not angry, Lydia," I said. "I'm tired of being reliable in ways that erased me." She looked up, confusion settling behind her lashes. "I gave for years, quietly, willingly. But giving is not the same as being valued. It's not the same as being seen." "I see you," she said quickly. "No," I replied. "You see the gap I used to fill, and now that it's empty, you've come looking." The silence stretched again. Not awkward, just honest. "I'm not here to punish," I continued. "I just stopped offering pieces of myself in exchange for proximity." Lydia's voice softened. "So, what now?" I turned toward the window where the last pink light of day was bleeding into blue. "Now I learn how to live without needing to be needed. And you learn what you actually value when there's no automatic deposit attached to it." She stood then, slowly, the stiffness of someone who had expected a negotiation and walked into a closed door. "Brent's going to take this hard," she said. "He already has." She nodded once, looked around the room again as if trying to memorize something she'd never paid attention to before. "I hope this isn't forever," she said, voice barely above a whisper. I didn't answer. Not because I was cruel, but because some things aren't meant to be assured anymore. They say motherhood means always being there. But no one tells you how to be there for yourself when no one else shows up. It's strange how quickly a place can feel like yours, not because you've lived in it long, but because you've stopped shrinking inside it. I'd been in Savannah for 5 weeks. And for the first time in years, I stopped waking up with someone else's schedule in my head. No morning routines wrapped around grandchildren. No dinner planning for people who never showed up. Just my feet on the wooden floor, the whistling kettle, and the light that poured in exactly how I liked it. I'd made friends. Dolores came by every Tuesday with peach muffins and the latest neighborhood gossip, mostly about who was dating who in the over 65 book club and whether the new mailman was too handsome to be trusted. I started volunteering at the local library, just shelving books at first, then helping kids with homework, then leading a quiet writing circle for women over 50 who had stories, but no one to tell them to. We called it Unwritten. There were 6 of us, each with a notebook, a pen, and a past we'd stopped apologizing for. I wasn't anyone's mother there. I wasn't anyone's backup babysitter or emergency fund or stand-in host. I was just Joanne, and Joanne, I was learning, was enough. One Wednesday afternoon, as I was closing up the reading room, I heard the front door swing open. "Grandma," I turned, and there she was. Emily. Wind-blown, pink-cheeked, and holding a duffel bag like she hadn't stopped moving since she landed. For a moment, I couldn't speak. Then I stepped forward, and she walked into my arms. I found the letter she whispered into my shoulder, the one I'd tucked in the new savings account folder, the one with no apology, just the truth. She pulled back, looked around the library like it was some kind of chapel. "You look peaceful," I smiled. "That's because I am." "I want to stay for a few days," she said. "If that's okay." I nodded. "If you help me make soup." We walked home in the kind of dusk that makes everything glow. No agenda, no promises. Just 2 women who once belonged to a family and now belong to each other, not because of blood or duty, but because we chose to stay. Sometimes reclaiming yourself means letting the right people find you in your absence and letting the rest live without your shadow. Emily stayed for 4 days. We walked the squares, visited the art museum, and had ice cream for breakfast, just because we could. She asked questions about me, not just about the past. And I answered honestly, not the edited maternal version, just truth. "You ever think of going back?" she asked one night over tea feet tucked under her on the couch. I shook my head slowly, back to what I said. The house I paid for, but was never invited to the family dinners where I cooked, but wasn't counted. She said nothing, just reached over, touched my hand. "You don't owe anyone an explanation," she said softly. Not even me. I didn't know when she'd gotten so wise. On her last morning, she left a little envelope on the counter with a sticky note. "You saved me in more ways than one. It's my turn to witness you now." Inside was a drawing, a sketch of me seated at the library window, head down writing. Lines, soft, steady. No halo. No pedestal. Just me present. Whole. When she left, I didn't cry. I cleaned the kitchen, watered the plants, put on Billie Holiday, and danced alone in the living room. No one watching. No one judging. Just me, exactly where I was supposed to be. A week later, I got a letter from Brent. Not a call. Not a text. An actual letter. It was short. A page typed. No apology. No ownership. Just confusion disguised as sentiment. "I just don't understand what changed. We always thought you loved helping. You were so good at it." That sentence stayed with me for days. They thought I loved it. Because I never said otherwise. Because I smiled through the hurt. Because I paid the bills without questions. Because I made it easy for them to never have to ask why I was always the one filling the gap. But love is not proven through depletion. And being good at giving is not the same as being happy to be emptied. I didn't respond. Not because I was cruel. Because I had finally learned that not all silences need filling. That week, I spoke with Carla, my attorney, and added one final clause to my will. Nothing dramatic, just a handwritten note attached to the trust. Please remember, I didn't walk away. I just stopped standing where I wasn't seen. It's December now. The air is crisp and Savannah twinkles at night like it remembers every story you've ever tried to forget. I sit by the window each evening with a book and a blanket. Sometimes Dolores joins me, sometimes not. Sometimes I write. Sometimes I don't. But I always return to myself. And that I've found is enough. You don't have to be invited back into the lives of those who left you behind. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stay exactly where you chose to bloom and let them live with the absence they created. If Joanne's story reminded you of someone, maybe even yourself, don't keep it to yourself. Leave a comment. Share your thoughts. And if you've ever chosen peace over pleasing, we see you. Subscribe for more stories where women like Joanne don't just survive, they reclaim, they rise, and they finally take up the space they were always worthy of.